The border war is back. On Monday night, Kansas and Missouri announced the resumption of their rivalry that had been dormant for nearly a decade. The teams will meet at Sprint Center in December 2020, starting a 6-game series between the schools. On today's Sports Beat KC, sponsored by Big O Tire, star columnist Vahe Gregorian and Sam Mellinger join me, Blair Kerkhoff, to talk border war, why it's back, and what it means. After a break, Sam and Vahe join me to do a little reminiscing. The World Series between the Washington Nationals and Houston Astros opens tonight, and it was 5 years ago the Royals embarked on their stunning run through the postseason to reach its first World Series in 3 decades. You'll hear us, and then you'll hear some clips from television and radio broadcasts of some of the biggest moments of the 2014 run through the postseason. It's Tuesday, October 22nd, and thanks for listening. Sam Mellinger, Vahe Gregorian are here, and for the last few years, guys, I was trying to figure out what new to say about the border war. The schools' positions were well known. Missouri never wanted it to end and thought it should continue after joining the SEC, and Kansas just said, nope, not doing it. Vahe, I read your column today. That was one of the first things you did, maybe the first thing you did when you came to the Kansas City Stars. You wrote about this topic, and Sam, you've written about it. I've written about it. We've all written about how Kansas and Missouri were never going to play again. And at about 7:20 on Monday night, I'm just staring at my email, just over email, and there's a release from Missouri saying the border war is back. And the first thing I thought was, well, this is a fake account. This is ridiculous. Why? How? First of all, they wouldn't announce it this way if it was back. But then the Kansas information came, and it's back, baby. The border war is back. Vahe, let's start with you. I know it's someone who covered Missouri for as long as you have, or as long as you did. You were like me, and I think Sam agrees too, that it should never have ended, but we're happy it's back.
Absolutely. And you mentioned this in a tweet last night, and this is true for me too. You specifically pointed to those last 2 basketball games in your top 10. And
oh gosh,
I would certainly add the 2007 football game in my top 10. I know we're talking about basketball, but this thing gets in your blood pretty quick. And I remember being back in the day, 1990 or whenever it was. I think my first game at Allen Fieldhouse was maybe they were 1-2, and it was Big Monday, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe what I was feeling, and it wasn't about seeing Missouri win or Kansas win. It was about the environment, and it became special to me immediately then. So special, in fact, I once asked my parents to come out and see a Missouri-Kansas basketball game, and I'll always remember my mom being like red-faced afterwards because she just couldn't believe what she'd been through, and she had no dog in the hunt.
Like,
what did I just see?
What the hell is this?
Yeah. But it was, so I've always felt that way about it. And one quick little other aside, it is funny about, that was the first interview I arranged when I got here. I just thought the first story needs to be they should play again. And so I got with Bill, and I still have on my tape recorder the very first interview with Bill here, and I'd known him a while, as you guys had. But his first words on there were along the lines of something we all tease each other about all the time, where he knows exactly the number he's talking about, but leaves it a little bit to doubt. So he goes, hey, well, you may want to check me on this, but I think that there are more Kansas alums in the metro area than there are K-State and Missouri combined. Is that, it might be 57.8%. I'm totally warping the numbers, but he protested too much, right? I mean, it was always on his mind. Now, we'll get into why now, and it maybe it's not exactly resumption of some kind of "we love you" fest here, but look, it's part of the DNA.
So why now, Sam?
Well, there's the cynical view, and there's
as I read in Mellinger Minutes.
Yes,
which was fantastic, by the way. If you read Mellinger Minutes, it's for Sam's breakdown. First of all, little behind the scenes. You probably had Mellinger Minutes all sort of wrapped up and ready to go, and with a different lead. And
came down from put my kids to bed and decided, realized I needed a rewrite. I just, one view is I liked Bill's line in Gary's story this morning about I got the 7 year itch. But notably, that game next year is going to be in the KU season ticket package, the Sprint Center. So I don't know. Maybe that's a little boost to some season ticket sales that were, behind what Kansas has been accustomed to. I don't think you have to. The dots are certainly there to connect that the football program is not awash in money with how they're handling David Beatty's buyout. So I mean that's one reason. But I think I don't know how everybody felt. I always felt like it was going to happen again, and I think I probably would have said 5 to 10 years, and we're right in the middle there. But it's a weird feeling because, like, for those of us that grew up here or that have lived here for a long time, you just said it, Vahe, it gets in your blood. And the KU Missouri games when I was a kid and sort of, becoming aware of the world a little bit and falling in love with sports, KU Missouri, other than tournament games, playoff games, KU Missouri was the game that you could just tell was different. You could just tell. You could see it on TV. It was just louder, the way the announcers were treating it. You could just tell that game was different, and it meant something bigger and more to a lot of people in a way that obviously I didn't understand when I was 6 or 8 or 10 or whatever, but you realize the fact first, and then you realize the why later. And, it made me sad that for the last 7 years, and think about this, the kids that will be college freshmen next year going to that game will have been 5 years old. Or I'm sorry, they will have been 10 years old the last time that KU, maybe fifth grade.
5th, 6th graders.
Yep, the last time. And so they don't know it. They've got to learn it if they've got an older sibling, if they've got parents, that's how they're going to get it. But I do think that 7 years hopefully is a short enough time that, the hatred will be like riding a bike. He's like, okay, that's a comfortable slipper, and we'll be awash in the hatred again because it really is a special deal.
That quick aside that Blair should remember best because I think it specifically was from one of his stories. So in 2007, I'm still at the Post-Dispatch, but of course this is Arrowhead Armageddon, right? With the that game building up the way it did, and Blair, you did some really special things with relation to the underpinnings of why this is more than just a sports thing. And I'm pretty sure this was your story, even though I really want to think I got this and had it in my story, but I think I'm going to lean on the side of attribution. You were in contact with a couple historians, and I'm bummed out I can't immediately remember his name because I've had exchanges with him since. And I think you got into order number 11 a little bit.
Yep.
But you also got into some aspect of this where maybe he told you about this or maybe you found it. There were people talking about some of the atrocities at the time and talking in the active tense along the lines of, we think we know who did it. That has always stayed with me, that was still kind of just present. Also staying with me is the plaque you pointed out on one of our first walks over to the Sprint Center, right between us, the Star and the Sprint Center.
The origin of the border war is on a historical marker just outside of Sprint Center between the Star office and the Sprint Center on Grand Avenue, Grand and 14th.
Yeah, it's like a couple hundred feet away.
Yes,
from the basketball court, basically.
The collapse of the house that killed the wives and other women related to some of the guerrilla fighters that led to the burning of Lawrence in 1863, I think. So I grew up in North Carolina, and I fell in love with college basketball because of the rivalries in the ACC. And back when I was a kid, it was North Carolina State versus North Carolina, and then Duke Carolina was profoundly interesting and always has been, and it's ESPN pushed and everything like that. We understand what Duke, North Carolina is. But I always tell people, now having been here for 30 years, I tell my friends in the East and anywhere else that people who are not familiar with our area, at least I did tell them this when Kansas and Missouri were playing, that there is no depth of feeling in a rivalry greater than Kansas and Missouri because of the historical roots of it. And and when I was digging into those roots for that football game in 07, I didn't expect to be surprised because I thought I'd heard everything, and I was a little surprised because it is deep rooted. And you said something in your Mellinger minutes, Sam, that is so true. People decide where to live in Kansas City based on this rivalry.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, I mean, like, where else does that exist anywhere in the country?
Nowhere.
It is the one. Like, I am like, words matter. I get, sort of fatigue on like war metaphors in sports, threw a bullet, threw a bomb, battled, lost the battle but won the war, like all these things that seep their way into sports, and it's ridiculous, all of it. I hate it. It's just a game. Let me pause.
I really changed my thinking on that after 9/11, by the way.
Yes.
That really had an impact on the way
it kept it in the forefront of your mind, right? You wouldn't lapse into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good way of putting it.
Kansas, Missouri is the one place where I think it's apt. Like when they tried to go border war to border showdown, no. It was a border war. And this is the closest thing that we have to an actual war. It's the same kind of teams, or the same sort of the ancestors of one side in a lot of ways. The Armins are on one side. and
the Fam Bros on the other.
Yeah, exactly right.
Fighting Fam
exactly
Bros.
Right. So let's call it what it is, man.
Shout out.
Thinking of you, Mike. All right, so let's roll down. The first game is December 2020 at Sprint Center, and then it alternates between Lawrence, Columbia, and then the final game in the 6-year series is at back at Sprint Center. Anything to that they went 2-2-2?
Well, Missouri people will tell you that's 4 in Missouri.
Yeah, and they would be correct. Right. And Kansas people will tell you that's 4 in Big 12 country.
That's right.
That's right.
So was there anything to? I kind of like it. I like I like that 2 of them are going to be at Sprint Center, and
cool.
and as we discuss that, let's also talk about the difference in the feeling there might be as a non-conference game versus a Big 12, Big 8, Big 7, Big 6 Missouri Valley game.
Just a quick thought on that is just that I do wonder a little bit how that will feel on the campus sites, right? Although, again, any game at Allen Fieldhouse always has that extra. And a game against a team like Missouri, even if it's a little diminished by the conference thing, it's going to feel the same. I don't know exactly about Columbia. I'm not sure. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I don't think I'm not used to that Mizzou arena really being a great atmosphere. I mean, it was obviously for the final game against Kansas, right? But
and it was that season in previous years. They were
right.
The Marcus Dedman,
it would be, and
teams.
This will draw something out, right? But I mean, is it not just going to be crackling electric, whatever here, no matter what? I mean, that's a pretty. I like the way they're doing this. Maybe though, I wonder if it's a little test market for a future contract just in Kansas City. Maybe.
It's interesting. Like I really like kicking it off here at the Sprint Center. It seems like the right format to do it in, and that the second year, the first campus game is going to be at Kansas would lend some credibility or whatever to the theory about the season ticket holder, because that in theory might be the year where Kansas is not eligible for a postseason game.
Yes.
If it goes the way that a lot of us
it
could. It could. But I like that they're getting all 3. I really do that if it was just at Sprint Center, I'd be stoked. And if it was just, home and home, Columbia and Lawrence, I'd be stoked, obviously. But I feel like getting all 3 of those venues involved is the right way to do it. The bragging rights game is sort of like it's the closest comp we have to anything like this, right? Kansas doesn't play a non-conference rival every year. But that place, those teams aren't always awesome or whatever, but that arena is always fun.
It is. I mean, it is the closest comp. And
I wonder, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wonder if they'll do it like they do at Bragging Rights and just half and half,
like Texas, Oklahoma.
Didn't they try to do that for the exhibition game 2 years ago? Or did they
I don't think they did.
They willy-nilly the tickets?
I think they willy-nilly because it was not last minute, but it was a little bit
late. It was absolutely
late.
Right?
It was very spontaneous.
Yeah.
When I seem to remember Kansas fans at the time saying we have no interest in this.
Oh, yeah.
It was just kind of silly. And that's been one of the silly things, right?
Yeah.
They've taken their cue from Bill's words a little bit on that. Although Bill always did hedge a little. And just in reviewing some of the things he said, he was always kind of like, well, we miss them, but we're not interested in them.
I always felt like Bill and fans were kind of playing off each other a little bit too. They were feeding each other about, it was a thing for Bill to be able to say, and like the fans, yeah, that's our guy, and vice versa. It just seemed like they were in it together.
Yeah, you're right. Well, just quick back to what you were actually talking about instead of where I took it. That Missouri-Illinois game, we've all been there. I've been to a lot of them just because I worked in St. Louis a long time, and it's a treasure. Mm-hmm. What I haven't thought about until this minute is, okay, it's December 20 at Sprint Center. That's usually about the time the Missouri-Illinois game is, right before Christmas.
Right. If I haven't looked, I assume December 20 is a Saturday, I'm assuming. It may not be.
I would guess that.
Would they go?
I can't imagine they'd go back to back with that. Would they? That's pretty high peak intensity, just nuclear.
It's a Sunday.
So it's a Sunday. So look, maybe Missouri's going to do. I haven't looked at this at all. I'm assuming that contract is going in perpetuity, or at least for some years to come with Illinois. But maybe that's between Christmas and New Year's now. I think it's completely hinged on holiday season before. It has been played, I think, after Christmas a time or two, but I could be making that up. I think this game is in that window that has traditionally been Missouri, Illinois.
Right. The other thing I wondered is when it moves to campus sites, will it finally be part of the Big 12 SEC Challenge? That's
could it be?
Yeah,
I don't know how those TV contracts work. If you already have a game scheduled, could they just sort of
I think it
commandeer the game?
Yeah, I think so. And I think in years that Kansas doesn't play Kentucky in the Champions Classic, ESPN always arranges a Kentucky-Kansas game for the Challenge. So maybe in one or two of those years that this game will be part of the Challenge. It doesn't, not necessarily, but now the teams know they have an opponent from that conference in those years.
You'll know this off the top of your head, I think, but I don't. What were the traditional dates for those challenges now?
Well, late January.
Okay, so
like
that's
last week in January.
That makes sense with as I recall this press release being laid out. At least the one I got from Kansas and not Missouri. The only dates put in there were December of the Sprint Center games,
the two Sprint
not
Center
the campus ones. So certainly could fit in that, but they obviously want some flexibility one way or another on that. So maybe it all connects.
All right, so we touched on it just a second ago. You guys don't necessarily. Did you ever buy the anti-Kansas factions on this? I'll tell you where I did.
The Kansas fans that didn't
want this. The never agains. I think as you mentioned them.
Never play 'ems.
The never play 'ems.
The one good point that they ever had, and it was only one, was that playing a non-conference game means less than a conference game.
Oh, no
That's
doubt
just
about it.
Factually accurate. That's it. But playing your most hated rival means more than playing Pitt State.
As it should.
Yes.
As it always should. But I will add to that, having had so many discussions with Larry Keating over the years, who was the architect of KU's non-conference basketball schedule, there was such a formula to what Kansas was trying to do with its non-conference schedule in terms of how many the tournament, the 3 or 4 game tournament that they play, X number of home games, X number of home and away games against opponents that are nationally, they're always Champions Classic. They had so many sort of built-in opponents that sometimes it just didn't make sense to play an opponent with the profile of a Missouri at a home and home. Now, that disregards the part of the profile, which is the most important.
Right.
It's your historic, most treasured rival.
Yeah, right.
They actually should have started with that game and then built the schedule around, the rest of the conference schedule around. But, hey, I'm just glad it's back. And, Vahe, you mentioned it. The last year, you covered both of those games. The last year that Kansas and Missouri played, it was your last year in St. Louis, right? Because just about your last year in St. Louis. And I was pinch hitting covering Kansas that year because we lost our KU beat writer after the non-conference. Those two games, the one at Columbia where Marcus Dedmon just went off, scored 9 of their 11 points to end the game on an 11-0 run, And then the game in Lawrence, where Kansas came from 19 down in the second half to win in overtime, as excited as I've ever seen Bill Self after a game.
Yeah.
We still use that photograph of him clenching his fist. And, those were remarkable atmosphere games.
Yeah. They were supersonic sound in Allen Fieldhouse. I mean, one of those ones where you needed to bring the earplugs, and not in this case, not just for the sound system, which sometimes gets a little extra cranky in that decibel count. There are certain games, right? We've all been really lucky. There's going to be a lot of competition for our top 10 things that we've gotten to attend, right? Yeah. But there are certain things that are going to stay with you forever, and those just are two of them. And what's the reason? Because those games wouldn't stand out to us if we didn't, at the time, think they were the last for a while, right? They probably wouldn't have been played the same way.
They still would have been great games.
They would have been great, but I dare say that the intensity might have been different, right?
Yes,
maybe some things would have played out differently.
Yep. Would have been intense as hell, but not as intense as that.
Yeah. So
well, and then Kansas screwed up in the Big 12 tournament that year by losing in the semifinals.
Broke my heart.
Avoiding Missouri in the championship.
Well, but something I thought about just last night. That was Missouri's the Big 12 exit tournament for Missouri. That's their last meaningful postseason win.
Oh,
they
man.
haven't won an NCAA tournament game since.
Nope.
They lost. That was the Norfolk State year, right?
Right, yeah. That was for sure.
And then the next year they lost to Colorado State in the first round. Then they got thrashed by Florida State in the only other NCAA appearance. So Missouri's last meaningful postseason game was them cursing themselves by chanting SEC and wearing those shirts. I think that was a little
being
karma.
Handed the Big 12 trophy.
Yeah, I thought I still don't really understand the mechanics why that was what Missouri wanted to walk out on. I mean,
I thought it was bad form.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was.
But
bad
I think
form.
it was.
But Sam, you love that kind of stuff.
It was funny.
Go ahead, but
we'll turn to the junior member of the panel here.
It was funny.
It's a war.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
it's
sort of.
It was funny.
It's sort of what happened. I mean, I think that any fan base, I think they might have been doing the same damn thing.
Well, I have thought about this a lot. The scenarios are imperfect here, but KU goes to the Big Ten and Missouri's still in the Big 12, right? Or somehow KU ended up in the SEC, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, how much would each side have handled this the exact same way or differently?
Exactly. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
the only difference is there's not like a Big Ten chant. Like there's not like a. They would have had to like figure out something like
catchy.
Just
go Big Ten.
Yeah, nobody ever chants that. That's the only difference. Right. My memory of that season, like I just remember that was the year that my wife and I got married, and we scheduled the wedding, and it happened. It was on. It was such that February 18th was the day. I remember my anniversary, guys. But then the KUMU game was like the next day or 2 days later or something like that. So it was going to be our honeymoon, right? And we only had one columnist at the time, and I remember like for a second wondering if I should like try to move the wedding. I quickly
I'll tell you, weddings have been moved for life.
I quickly determined that was not the best course of action. But the first game of that, the Columbia game was first in that season, and it was the Saturday before the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was in Indianapolis that year, and so I drove from Indy to Columbia. I can't remember how far that is. To watch that game and just
6, yeah.
And I'm like, hey, if this is the only one I can make, I'm damn sure not going to miss it. Watched it and drove home like happy as I was like, you know what? That was the game. There's no way the second one's going to be as fun as that. Like that's as good as it gets.
You saw the game.
Yeah. And then
3 weeks later,
and I'm watching, and I'm not complaining obviously, but I'm sitting there watching from a hotel room in Hawaii. And I'm like, this game appears to be better than the one I saw.
Well, as I recall, the Star called in the veteran, I don't know if he's a left-hander or a right-hander, but Joe Posnanski came back and wrote off that game for the Star.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
That's what it took to make up for the vacuum.
Yeah, come back, Junior.
I never knew that part of the story. That is great.
Yeah. All right, guys, the reminiscing will continue after we take a break. It's the occasion of the World Series starting tonight, and it's the 5-year. It's been 5 years since the Royals' postseason run in 2014, and we are going to remember some of the big moments on the path to the World Series for the Royals. Back after this.
When it comes to saving you money on tires, nobody does it better than Big O Tires. Like saving you up to $120 on select sets of Goodyear, Yokohama, Pirelli, and Continental tires now through November 3rd. That's $70 off instantly, plus up to $50 back by mail-in rebate when you purchase using your Big O Tires card. Hurry into Big O Tires and see how much you can save. Big O Tires, the team you trust. For the location nearest you, go to bigotires.com.
Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/sportsbeatkc offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Back with Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. We're going to talk about the Royals' 2014 playoff run with the Nationals and Astros getting ready to kick off the however many number it is World Series. What is this? Do we know? It's 100 and it's got to be about
100 something.
100 and something World Series tonight. But before we get into the postseason, I just hear a couple of numbers. On June 19th, 2014, the Royals were in first place. They were a first place team. Game and a half up. It had to be the Tigers, right? Because they were still the division kingpin. On July 21st, they were 8 games back. They had taken that big slide. They were 2 games under 500, and that's when they started that 24-6 run, got back to first place. Now, the rest of the year, they sort of jockeyed position with the Tigers, ended up as the wild card team, but they were in the postseason for the first time. And I'll start by saying that when the Royals clinched the playoff position in Chicago, they still didn't know whether they're going to win the division or be a wild card team. This is what baseball and sports can do to you. At that time, my kids, my 2 oldest, 2 boys, were not living at home anymore. They were out and about. And I went back and called them and just had conversations with them because they had watched or had listened or paid attention to the game. And you just start thinking about going to games with your kids when you're young. And so that's how I spent getting back after writing and filing, and it's past midnight, and I don't remember where they were, but that's how meaningful that occasion was to me. And it's funny, as we were writing stories going into the postseason, I can remember talking to other people that way, including people who were at Chicago at the clincher, and people crying and hugging family members, and sports is stupid. It's just stupid, but it makes you feel that. Now, Sam, you got kids. They weren't born then.
Sammy was a baby.
Okay.
Yeah, he was born in February of 2014. But I like sport. This is kind of what you're talking about, right? Like I've said this a million times, but like sports are the most irrelevant thing in the world, right up until the moment they're the most relevant thing in the world. And that was it, man. Like, I mean, it was just the memories that a lot of people had. We had been doing stories so long about how long it had been since the Royals were good that those stories were old. Like I remember doing stories.
They were the second, third generation of stories about how bad the Royals were.
I remember doing a story. I think it was kids born in 1985 at their like 22nd birthday or something like that. The idea being they're probably out of college, they're building their lives, and like, why the hell are you people still Royals fans? And that story was 7 years old by the time 2014 came around. Those people had some of those people I talked to have been married and divorced, like signed and lost mortgages, like real life stuff had happened. And the other thing about it was that emotion, but you have that sometimes, like the Cubs had it the very next year.
Oh, I remember the Red Sox in 2004
Yes.
Absolutely had that. That was a a century, just like the Cubs were, almost a century of that.
But what you don't have a lot is, and I'm not going to say not ever, because I'm sure we can come up with examples, but you don't have that part of it, grown adults that can't remember the last time that this happened, combined with just a dizzying and almost unrealistic string of incredible baseball games. I mean, just that wild card game. I bought tickets. We bought tickets. My wife and her brother to go, and I don't remember. I think it's one of those things like if you have a bad memory, you try and push it out. Like I don't remember what we paid for those tickets, but it was a lot. I remember like cringing when I hit, confirmed payment.
Because you were never when were you ever gonna see a Royals postseason game?
It was the last playoff game until, like our baby was 50 and like hopefully was a doctor and could take us then. But, and I remember I texted my wife in the 7th inning or whatever it was when it's, 7-1, what the score. And I was just like, sorry about the game, kind of sucks, but hope you guys had fun. And the next time I talked to her is the next morning, and it was just like, what the hell happened? That was incredible. And then that was probably the best game, with the stakes and everything. But I mean, it was, the Moustakas in Anaheim, all the Baltimore games, the Wade Davis game the next year, the Astros game 4, the Johnny Cueto game. It was just like, game after game after game.
That game was the portal to it all, right?
Oh, my God.
I mean, I think that game changed everything. Even 2015, I don't think happens the same way without that
I think there's something to that.
I loved how, Vahe, you had just gotten to Kansas City. Sam had covered more than a decade of terrible baseball. We had lived through decades of terrible baseball. You get here from St. Louis, and right away, you don't see a losing team.
This is what happens.
End of 13, right. That's Royals baseball.
Well, a thing that's funny, this is true. Because I came here with a fresh set of eyes, everything sort of looked possible to me, right? I was not always in this mode of what is the ridiculous thing that's going to happen. And I've certainly seen it before and since, but I didn't feel like that. I sort of thought, this team's kind of interesting at 13. They seem to be on an upward surge, but I think what everybody else naturally would feel is like they're still not there, and this has been so long, right?
It's the baggage.
Ned and Dayton, are they really going to make it, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, we can still look at that A's game as a hinge on how that could have changed. I don't know how much of the Fire Ned column you'd written that night, but it was, it was bubbling.
Yes, more than a couple paragraphs, I think. If I remember right.
So there's that aspect of it, but part of that also was a real appreciation of this point that it fast forwarded us into living here. I mean, we'd been here about a year.
That's interesting.
But Cindy and I have talked about this a lot. We were engulfed in the community in a way, circling back to your point with your boys, Blair. I mean, you just feel it in a way like it all wove together. So part of that was, remember how present the Royals themselves were in the community, right? The whole thing with McFadden's and you'd see them out everywhere, all those things. But you sort of felt like we're all just in this. That's a really weird thing to say out loud as a sports writer, but you kind of felt like that we're all one entity almost. And I've always told my friends in St. Louis, you don't have any way to appreciate what this meant to Kansas City because you're I think the longest the Cardinals have not been in a postseason is like 12 years in the last 90. Yeah. And so it's just an entirely different feeling. And for it to go from that wild card game all the way to the end, that was the part that was, didn't most people sort of feel like, well, okay, they won the wild card game, it's okay to lose to the Angels.
They get a real series.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, but at least they get a real they get a real series. And that first night in California, I remember thinking, oh, this maybe is going to be a little different than what I thought.
It was the way it happened. It was Moustakas, the guy that had been demoted and then brought back up. And people like to say that when he was brought back up, it changed his confidence and all that stuff. But his numbers were pretty miserable after he got brought back up.
Just some power, right? I mean,
a little bit. But if you go back, I mean, his slash line was not, it was not it was like borderline playable. And he was really fighting it. And then they talk about once the playoffs start, everybody's average is 0. And I don't know how much of this is like reverse engineering and just trying to figure something out. But when he hit that home run was it the 12th inning or the 11th inning? And I just will never forget that. And that stadium is it's LA traffic, but it's very close, a short drive from where he grew up. And I remember him rounding the bases. The ball went out as right field, and he was about halfway between first and second, and he just took his fists and pounded them together, like pounded one fist with the other one. And it was an emotion. It was a thing that he had never done before. And you could see it all in that one little move. And I think that it changed. And that was also the first of many moments where the Royals are on the road and they do something, and the stadium is silent, and the only thing that you can hear, even all the way up in the press box, is a bunch of noise from one specific area. It's the dugout, and then it's the family section that is screaming, and everybody else is silent. It was so cool.
You just reminded me of this. And of course, this was kind of just a side note here, but that's the night that Greg Holland arrived from.
Oh, that's right.
From
his
North
child
Carolina,
being born from North Carolina,
flying across the country
in the 5th inning.
Yeah.
And as I recall, running with his bag and being yelled at by security, I think had to yell, "I'm a player."
Yeah.
Right. Had to talk his way into the stadium, basically.
Yeah. Just weird side note.
Yeah. What I remember about kind of what happened on the field besides the home runs, Moustakas in Game 1, Hosmer had the walk-off, but the game-winning home run in Game 2, was the outfield defense. The Nori Aoki catch, the Lorenzo Cain catches. Dyson had a great catch. I just remember thinking, this is a charmed team. They're getting opportunities to make plays, and if you're the other team, how demoralizing is it? The Angels had the best record in baseball, or at least in the American League that year, and they just had to be demoralized watching the Royals make all these crazy catches.
And then, of course, though, the Royals are going to get squashed by the Orioles, the dunce versus the genius.
Yeah.
All that, right? That was the narrative. Like, well, they've come this far, and we know they swept the Angels, but now they're up against the real team. Most home runs in baseball.
Yeah.
And
little ballpark, outfield defense won't matter as much. And that was it was back in Kansas City, but I remember one of probably a dozen. But Alex Gordon having an incredible catch. Remember when he just rammed into the wall? And he
laid there.
He did what Hochevar later called a total Gordo move, where he just makes the catch, runs into the wall, and just lays there like he's dead for like 3 seconds. Tell people, "Uh-oh, is he really hurt?" And then he just pops up, blows a bubble, and throws the ball back to the field. The Moustakas catch. I forgot. Was that the Orioles series?
It was, and it was in Game 3 because I remember it happened at night. And Game 4 was in the afternoon.
Yep. There's just. I've come to think that, like when they start building the statues. It should be those moments. It should be Moustakas going horizontal.
Yes.
It should be Salvi reaching all the way across the plate. It should be Gordon pointing to the sky after the Familia homer. I mean, there's a million like that.
And no one player probably deserves a statue based on his career accomplishments. I mean, we'll wait and see what Perez does.
Yeah.
But I totally agree. To represent those 2 years, it's a collection of those moments because I see them. I see him all the time, those moments. I also remember, let's before we finish, let's talk about Ned Yost, how his demeanor throughout the whole thing. He was, crusty Ned, we called him, and among other things, but I can't believe he was so relaxed and just friendly, and his demeanor had changed during the postseason.
I think this is how I see it, and maybe we've even heard people say this, but I think winning that A's game just unlocked everything. And I think we then saw the Ned that people who really know him see a little bit more. I remember just this odd thing when they were getting ready to go play the Giants. It was one of those workout days here, right? Gets in between or something. And I just asked him if he could sit down and talk a few minutes about his childhood growing up there. And he was like, "Oh, sure, that'd be great." Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't, for our listeners, I mean, it's just, Ned certainly was cooperative, and Krusty at times was cooperative, but at the kind of biggest moments of their lives, they don't just say, "Let's sit down and talk in the dugout for a half hour," and he did. And I just thought that reflected his state of mind at the time.
Yeah. Can I tell one more story that you guys
please.
have heard me tell this story just like in private a million times. But
The listeners should know that Sam is like bouncing up and down in his seat as he says this.
well, I love this story about, because I'd been talking to everybody around the team about how much has to go into this. And you have to have good baseball players, obviously. They have to be focused, obviously. They have to be healthy, obviously. But there's also an amount of luck, that plays into it. And the Royals got every little break. And that's not to diminish every team gets breaks or whatever. But somebody, and I won't use his name just because it wasn't that kind of conversation, but a member of the front office was like, I got a story for you. I was like, okay. And he said, I forgot who got hurt, but they needed a spot start for a game in Toronto in 2004.
15.
Was it 15? And it was down to Aaron Brooks, and I forgot the other guy.
I know the story.
And the Royals executive that I'm talking to says, we had a meeting about it, and everybody's making their point. And he said, I pounded the table. And, everybody, there's always a pound the table part of these stories. He said, I pounded the table. And I said, I don't know if Aaron Brooks is going to give you 7 innings and only give up 2, but I know for damn sure he's not going to get lit up. He's not going to poop the bed. He didn't say poop. And then we all know what happened with Aaron Brooks. He went like 2/3 of an inning, gave up, I think, 1,000 runs. I'd have to double check it. And so my guy, he's telling the story and he just goes, oops. And the point was, you can even make some mistakes. That was my biggest miscalculation. That is, I was looking at everything that went wrong with the Royals in 14 especially. And remember, Hosmer got his wrist or hand broken on right after the trade deadline had passed.
Yes.
I was like, a team like this has no margin. They're screwed now. But that kind of opened my eyes. Everybody has stuff that goes wrong with them, and you can make it up somehow, some way.
Can I just remind of also, you're triggering this thought, just another sort of little thing. It sort of hinges, again, a little bit on the luck thing, but on just sort of the oddities that played out. We might have talked about this even on a podcast recently. But probably when we were talking about Mondesi, him joining the Royals that year. But I can't forget about a 1-0 win they had in Oakland.
Yeah.
It was a Mondesi home run.
No,
Ibanez.
Ibanez.
I'm sorry, I keep saying Mondesi.
Yeah.
I meant Ibanez the whole
Ibanez.
time. Sorry, Ibanez. So he hits that home run. It's maybe the only thing he really contributed on the field. That's the difference between them playing the wild card game at home and on the road, I think. I think the way it played out. And that's probably the difference in them winning that game. It at least seems to be. And he was more than that. But that was an example of what you were saying, Sam, that this is the stuff flowing for you that you don't know how it's all going to come together.
Yep.
It's its own magic.
Yep.
That was fun, guys. As we leave, we're going to you're going to hear some clips. You're going to hear Fox Sports call of Sal Perez's game-winning RBI in the wild card game. After that, you'll hear Denny Matthews' call of Moustakas' 11th inning home run in Game 1 of the ALDS against the Angels. And then maybe what I think is Denny Matthews' best call of the postseason, the final out of the 2014 ALCS against the Orioles. And then the Fox Sports broadcast call of the Alex Gordon at bat in the 9th inning of the bottom of the 9th of the World Series game against the Giants. We didn't talk anything about the World Series, which was the 7th game, and I think I read this only the 4th time in baseball history that that a batter came up with a chance to win the game in the bottom of the 9th of Game 7 of a World Series was Sal Perez after Gordon. But we're going to give you Gordon's base hit and then run around the bases here. So enjoy these, and we will talk to you again soon.
Now looking for a 2-out hit. Pass through into left field. The Kansas City Royals are walking off into the ALDS.
Next pitch to Moustakas is belted to deep right field. Back goes Calhoun to the wall and gone. Moustakas on a 1-1 pitch got it over the right field fence. Bouncing ball, Moustakas, fair ball. Sets, throws, Royals win it. Kansas City, you've got a World Series.
That's in the air to left center. That ball is down. And it gets passed to the wall. Gordon is going to dig for third. A mistake in the outfield. And he will hold there with 2 out representing the tying run.
That'll do it for today's show. Links to Vahe's columns, Mellinger minutes, and other stories written about the return of the border war can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Thanks to Leah Becerra and Kathy Lou for their production expertise. You can find SportsBeat KC just about anywhere you can download a podcast. Thanks for doing it today and in the future. We'll be back on Wednesday to talk sports in Kansas City. I think a little Chiefs and Big 12 basketball will be the topics. Talk to you then.